Emily's mornings had become painfully ordinary. The same kitchen, the same smell of coffee. The same polite good morning from her husband, Daniel, before he rushed out the door with his briefcase. They had been married for almost 10 years, but lately, their conversations felt like background noise, polite words without meaning. The love between them hadn't disappeared, but it had quieted like a song playing too softly to recognize. Emily often wondered if that was how marriages were supposed to feel after a decade steady but silent. That Tuesday morning in Boston, the rain came early, turning the city gray. Emily sat by the window, watching the drops trace uneven paths down the glass. She used to love the rain. Now, it only made her feel trapped. She scrolled absent-mindedly through her phone, checking messages, reading news headlines, pretending not to notice how empty the house felt. Daniel had called earlier saying he'd be late again. Meetings, clients, travel, always something. She told him she understood, though part of her DIDN single quotes tell her phone buzzed again. A notification blinked on the screen. Aaron sent you a message. Emily froze. The name hit her like a sudden gust of wind. It had been 12 years since she last saw that name. 12 years since she'd last spoken to him. Aaron had been her college love, the kind that never really left her heart. They'd spent 2 years together before life pushed them in different directions. She'd gone into marketing. He'd gone into architecture. Their breakup had been quiet but painful, not because of betrayal, but because timing hadn't been kind. Her heart raced as she opened the message. Hey, Emily, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I'm back in town for a while. Thought it'd be nice to catch up. Just coffee, nothing weird. For a long moment, she just stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Just coffee. It sounded harmless, but deep down, she knew what harmless could become. She could almost hear her own heartbeat echoing in the room. She thought about deleting the message, pretending she'd never seen it. But her curiosity was stronger than her caution. Hi, Aaron. Wow, it's been forever. Sure, coffee sounds fine. She hit send before she could change her mind. That night, Daniel called to say he'd be staying at the office late. Emily told him to take care, then sat in silence, staring at the city lights outside. She wondered why she'd agreed to see Aaron. It wasn't like she wanted anything to happen. Maybe she just wanted to remember who she used to be. Someone who laughed more, dreamed bigger, felt seen. 2 days later, she stood outside a cafe downtown, her umbrella trembling slightly in her hand. The rain had stopped, but the air was cool, sharp, and filled with the smell of wet pavement. Through the glass, she saw him sitting by the window, older, broader shoulders. A few lines around his eyes, but the same calm smile she remembered. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she walked in. Emily, he said, standing up. His voice still had that warmth that used to make her heart slow down. Aaron, she breathed, smiling nervously. You look the same? You don't, he said softly. You look even better. They sat down, ordered coffee, and fell into conversation like no time had passed. He told her about his travels, the projects he'd worked on, the cities he'd seen. She told him about her job in marketing, about Daniel, though she kept it brief. Every time she said her husband's name, something inside her felt uncertain, like a note that didn't fit the melody as they talked. She found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in a long while. He still remembered her quirks, how she always stirred her coffee twice before drinking it, how she tapped her nails when she was thinking. Those little things Daniel never seemed to notice anymore. When they finished their drinks, Aaron smiled. It's strange, he said. You're exactly how I remember you, but also not at all. What do you mean? She asked. He looked thoughtful. You used to have this light in you. You talked about writing, traveling, starting your own business. Do you still think about that? Emily blinked, realizing she hadn't thought about those dreams in years. No, she said quietly. Life got busy. He nodded, and for a moment there was silence, the kind that said more than words could. Then he smiled again, softly. Well, maybe some lights never go out. They just wait. When they said goodbye outside, the wind picked up. Emily held her umbrella tightly as Aaron walked her to her car. Before she got in, he said, I thought about you sometimes. More than I should have, probably. Her heart skipped a beat. She forced a smile. I didn't, she lied. But the truth followed her all the way home, that night. Daniel was already asleep when she got in. She stood by the bed, watching him breathe, the rise and fall of his chest, steady and calm. She tried to feel what she used to feel, love, comfort, safety, but something had shifted. It wasn't that she loved him less. It was that, somewhere inside her, a part of her that had been sleeping for years had just woken up, over the next few days. She tried to forget about Aaron. She threw herself into work, met friends for lunch, cooked Daniel's favorite meals. But every so often, she'd find herself glancing at her phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. And when it finally did, a simple "hope your week's going okay," she felt her pulse quicken all over again. They started texting casually, harmlessly. Jokes about old college memories, favorite movies, the weather. But beneath the surface, there was something unspoken, a quiet pull neither of them mentioned, but both felt. One afternoon he texted her, "Would you want to grab lunch sometime?" Just to catch up again. She stared at the message for a long time. She knew she shouldn't. She knew how oozily one lunch could become two, how Oosely's old feelings could find their way back. But her heart betrayed her reason. "Sure," she typed. "Just lunch." That Friday they met at a small restaurant by the harbor. The sky was clear, the water calm, and the air smelled of salt and sunlight. They talked for hours about work, about life, about how fast everything seemed to be passing them by. When they walked out, Aaron looked at her and said, "You seem lonely." Emily blinked, surprised. "I'm not," she said automatically. He smiled gently. "I didn't say you were alone. I said lonely." His words stayed with her all night. She sat in her car before going inside, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at her didn't seem like the one she used to know. Her eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding everything in. When she went inside, Daniel greeted her with a distracted smile, barely looking up from his laptop. "Long day?" he asked. "Yeah," she whispered, hanging her coat. "Just a long day." Later that night, when he fell asleep beside her, she lay awake listening to the rain return outside. Her phone buzzed once. She reached for it, Aaron again. "You still up?" "Yeah," she replied. "Can't sleep," he texted back. "Thinking too much." "About what?" she asked, though she already knew. "About things that never really end." Her hand trembled as she read the words. She didn't reply. But her silence said everything. Emily closed her eyes and tried to remind herself that she wasn't the kind of person who lied. That she had built her life on honesty, commitment, trust. But deep down, she knew that something had shifted. A quiet lie had already been told. Not to Daniel, but to herself. And as the rain fell harder outside, she realized that sometimes betrayal doesn't start with an action. It starts with a thought. One you let stay just a little too long the next morning. Daniel kissed her goodbye before leaving for another trip. She smiled back, pretending everything was normal. But as soon as the door closed, she stood in silence. Her heart heavy with the truth, she couldn't speak. The lie she never planned to tell had already begun. Emily thought she could control it. The feelings, the messages, the pull she felt every time Aaron's name lit up her phone. She told herself it was just old memories, nothing dangerous, nothing real. But as the days passed, those messages became the brightest moments in her day. What started as polite check-ins soon turned into longer, deeper conversations. They spoke about everything, regrets, dreams, the people they had become. Emily had never meant for it to go this far, but every time she tried to stop, she COULDN, single quotes. T.O. meanwhile, had grown busier than ever. His company was preparing for a major project overseas, which meant late nights and weekends away. He always apologized, always promised they'd take a trip soon, but Emily had stopped believing it. The distance between them wasn't measured in miles, it was in silence. She didn't blame him. She just missed being seen. One evening, Emily was driving home from work when her phone buzzed. It was Erin again. "I'm downtown. Just finished a meeting. Want to grab a coffee before you head home?" She hesitated at the red light, her fingers trembling over the screen. She knew she shouldn't. She knew what this could become. But then her loneliness spoke louder than her reason. "Sure," she replied. 15 minutes. The cafe was quiet that evening, filled with the soft hum of conversations and the smell of roasted coffee beans. Erin was already there, waiting by the window, smiling the way he always used to, calm, warm, easy. When she sat down, he handed her a cup of her favorite drink. "Still 2 sugars, right?" he asked. Emily smiled, surprised he remembered. "You have a good memory. I remember everything about you," he said softly. The words hung between them like a truth neither wanted to admit. They talked for an hour, maybe 2, about small things that didn't matter and big things they didn't dare to name. When she finally stood to leave, Erin reached out and gently touched her hand. It was innocent, brief, but it sent a wave through her she hadn't felt in years. "Emily," said, his voice quiet but sure, "you deserve to be happy. Whatever that means." She didn't answer. She just nodded, whispered goodbye, and left, heart racing, hands trembling, unsure if she was more afraid of what had just happened or what hadn't. That night, Daniel called again from his hotel room in Chicago. He talked about meetings, deadlines, and the long flight home next week. Emily listened, responding when needed, but her thoughts were somewhere else. When he finally said, "I miss you," she wanted to say it back, but the words caught in her throat. After they hung up, she stood in the kitchen, staring at her reflection in the window. Her own face looked unfamiliar, like she'd become someone she didn't recognize. She told herself nothing had happened, that she hadn't crossed a line. But in her heart, she knew lines didn't always need to be physical to be broken. Over the next few weeks, she and Erin kept meeting by accident at first, then on purpose. Sometimes it was lunch. Sometimes it was just a walk by the river. They never did anything wrong, but the air between them was thick with everything they didn't say. Emily found herself smiling again, laughing again, even feeling alive again. But every time she came home, the guilt followed her like a shadow. One evening, she came home to find Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, looking exhausted. "I booked us a weekend trip," he said with a hopeful smile. "Just the 2 of us. I thought it might be nice to get away." Her heart sank. She should have been happy he was trying, after all, but instead she felt trapped. "That's sweet," she said carefully. "When?" "This weekend," he replied. "I already cleared your schedule with your boss. You've been working too hard." Emily forced a smile. "That's great," she said, though her voice sounded distant. That night, lying in bed beside him, she couldn't sleep. Her phone buzzed once. "Erin, again. Missed talking to you today?" She stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "I can't talk for a few days. Going away with Daniel." There was a long pause before his reply came. "He's lucky. Don't forget that." The words hit her harder than she expected. She turned off her phone, rolled over, and stared at the ceiling. Daniel's breathing beside her was steady, peaceful. She closed her eyes, but instead of sleep, she saw Erin's face, his eyes, his quiet understanding. And she realized how dangerous it had all become. The next morning, they left for their trip. The cabin Daniel had booked was small but beautiful, hidden in the woods near a lake. The scenery was peaceful, but Emily felt uneasy. Daniel tried to make her laugh, cooked her dinner, even surprised her with wine and music. For a while, it almost felt like the old days. They talked, shared stories, and even danced under the string lights he'd hung outside. But later that night, when he reached for her hand, she hesitated just for a second, but long enough for him to notice. He didn't say anything, just looked away quietly. "Daniel," she whispered, guilt rising in her throat. "I'm sorry. I've just been tired lately, stressed." He smiled faintly. "It's okay. I know I've been distant too. I just want us to find our way back. Those words, "find our way back," stayed with her. She wanted that too, or at least she thought she did. But she also couldn't stop thinking about the part of her that had already gone somewhere else. When they returned home on Sunday, things between them seemed lighter. For the first time in months, they shared a quiet dinner together, no distractions. Daniel talked about taking more time off. Emily promised to cut down on work. For a moment, she believed maybe this could still be fixed. Then Monday came. And so did another message from Aaron. "How was your trip?" She shouldn't have replied. She knew that. But temptation had a quiet voice that always sounded like reason. "It was fine," she wrote. "Peaceful." "But you don't sound peaceful," he replied. Her chest tightened. She didn't answer. But an hour later, she found herself standing outside his office downtown, her heart pounding like it used to when she was 20. He met her in the lobby, surprised but happy. "Emily," he said. "What are you doing here?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I just needed to see you." They went for a walk near the harbor, the city lights flickering on the water. Neither of them said much. When they stopped, he turned to her, his expression serious. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I know," she said. He looked at her for a long time. "Then why are you—" She couldn't answer, because the truth would break her in that silence. The air between them shifted, not in a way that was physical, but emotional, deep, undeniable. For a moment, it felt like time had folded in on itself, bringing back everything she'd tried to bury. "I've missed you," he said finally. Voice barely a whisper. Emily's eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. "You shouldn't say that," she said. But her voice trembled. "Then tell me you don't feel it too," he replied gently. She couldn't, and he didn't need her to. They stood there in silence, both knowing they'd crossed something invisible, a line of the heart that couldn't easily be undone. When Emily drove home that night, she felt like she was carrying two worlds on her shoulders, one built on truth, the other on longing. And though she hadn't done anything she could name as wrong, her heart knew otherwise. She walked inside to find Daniel asleep on the couch, the TV still on. She covered him with a blanket and sat beside him quietly, guilt pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't lift. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, steady, endless. She looked out the window and whispered to herself, "What am I doing?" But the answer didn't come. Only the echo of her choices did. And deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Something had been set in motion, something that couldn't be undone. The morning after that rain-soaked night, Emily woke up feeling hollow. The sound of Daniel moving around the kitchen reminded her of everything real in her life. The smell of coffee, the quiet hum of the house, the man who had loved her for years without question. But her heart was somewhere else, lost between guilt and desire for something she couldn't even name anymore. At breakfast, Daniel smiled at her gently. "You slept late," he said. "I made pancakes." "Your favorite?" She forced a smile, grateful and sad at the same time. "Thank you. That's sweet." He leaned against the counter, looking at her like he was trying to read something in her face. "You've seemed different lately," he said softly. "Not angry, just somewhere else." Emily's fork froze halfway to her mouth. She looked at him, wanting to tell the truth, but afraid of what that would mean. "I'm just tired," she said finally. "That's all." He nodded slowly, but she could tell he didn't believe her. The silence stretched between them like a wall neither could climb. After Daniel left for work, Emily sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the untouched pancakes. Her phone buzzed again. It was Aaron. "Can we talk?" Her heart skipped. She knew this couldn't keep going, but the part of her that felt alive when she was around him was louder than her reason. "Where?" she replied. "The park. By the old fountain." The park was quiet when she arrived, golden leaves drifting across the path. Aaron was already there, hands in his coat pockets, looking both nervous and relieved when he saw her. "Emily," he said softly, as if her name itself hurt to say. She stopped a few feet away. "We can't keep doing this," she said quickly. "Whatever this is, it's not right." He nodded, eyes fixed on the ground. "I know." I've been trying to stay away, but I can't. Every time I think I've moved on, I end up thinking about you again." Her heart ached at his words. "You can't say things like that." "Then tell me you don't feel it," he said, looking up at her. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But her silence told him everything. Aaron stepped closer. "You deserve to feel something real again," he whispered. "You deserve to be happy." Tears burned in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said. "This isn't just about me. I have a life, a husband who trusts me. I can't throw that away because of something that might not even last." He nodded, but his expression stayed pained. "I get it. But don't lie to yourself, Emily. You're already halfway gone." His words hit her like a wave. She turned and walked away before he could say anything else. As she drove home, tears streamed down her face, and for the first time in years, she felt completely lost. That night, Daniel came home early, carrying takeout from her favorite restaurant. "I thought we could have a quiet night in," he said with that warm smile she used to love so much. Emily tried to match his energy, but inside she felt a war raging. The guilt was too heavy now, pressing down on her until she could barely breathe. Halfway through dinner, Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Em," he said simply. "No matter what's going on in your head, I just want you to know that." Something inside her broke. She set down her fork and stared at him through tears. "Daniel, there's something I need to tell you." Keha's smile faded. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "I've been talking to someone from my past." He said nothing at first, just stared at her like he was trying to understand what he'd just heard. "Talking," he repeated quietly. She nodded. "That's all. But it shouldn't have happened. I let it go too far emotionally, not physically. I'm sorry. I don't know why I did it." He raised a hand to stop her. "Emily, please, just tell me the truth. Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air like a blade. She looked at him, her heart breaking. "Yes," she whispered. "But I don't know if I love myself right now." Daniel leaned back, running a hand through his hair. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he stood. "I need some air," he said quietly, and walked out. Emily sat at the table long after he'd gone, her hands trembling. The house felt painfully empty the next day. Daniel didn't come home after work. He texted her that he needed space, that he was staying with a friend for a few days. Emily understood. She didn't even blame him. She had broken something sacred. The following week was a blur. She went to work, came home, and avoided everyone. She didn't reach out to Aaron again. She deleted his messages, erased his number, and promised herself she'd never look back. But one evening, she saw him waiting outside her office building. "Aaron," she said, her voice low, "you can't be here." "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," he said. "You look lost." "I am," she admitted. "But I can't fix that by being here with you." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "Then promise me something," he said. "Promise you'll find what makes you happy, even if it's not me." She swallowed hard. "I promise." He smiled faintly, then turned and walked away. She stood there, watching until he disappeared into the crowd, realizing that sometimes love wasn't about holding on. It was about letting go. Weeks passed before Daniel finally came home. When he walked through the door, Emily's heart raced. He looked tired, older somehow. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded, leading him to the living room. "I've had time to think," he said. "About us, about everything. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt. But I also know people make mistakes when they're hurting. I can't forget what you did, but I also can't ignore all the years we've built together." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But I want to make things right. I want to earn back your trust." He nodded slowly. "Then let's try," he said. "One day at a time." That night, they sat together quietly, no grand gestures. No sudden healing, just the fragile beginning of something new. In the following months, Emily focused on repairing what she had broken. She and Daniel went to counseling, started taking walks together again, learned how to talk, really talk about their fears and needs. It wasn't easy. Some days felt heavier than others, but slowly. Something began to shift. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from their porch, Daniel turned to her. "You know," he said, "I used to think love was about being perfect for each other. But maybe it's just about choosing each other even when it's hard." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then I choose you," she said softly. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Then we'll be okay." Months later, Emily found herself walking alone through that same park where she'd met Aaron. The air was warm, filled with the sound of laughter and life. She stopped by the fountain, remembering the moment that had changed everything, the choices, the pain, the lessons. She wasn't proud of what had happened, but she was grateful for what it had taught her. That love couldn't grow in shadows, that honesty mattered more than desire, and that sometimes forgiveness was the bravest thing of all. She sat on the bench, took a deep breath, and smiled to herself. For the first time in a long while, she felt peaceful, not because everything was perfect, but because she finally understood herself. When she went home that evening, Daniel was cooking dinner. He looked up and grinned. "You're late," he said playfully. "Got caught in traffic," she replied, her heart full. He kissed her forehead and handed her a glass of wine. "Two new beginnings," he said. "Two new beginnings," she echoed as they ate together. The house filled with warmth and laughter again. The past was still there. It always would be, but it no longer owned her. She had faced her mistakes, made her choice, and chosen love, not escape. And this time, she meant it.